Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. And ESPN has produced another series of lists, very much similar to the lists that they produced last week. This time around, it is the offense, not the defense. So, thought I'd go ahead and take a look and see if any Seahawks can actually crack the top 10 of any list. So, for those of you who maybe missed my video last week or haven't been following this ESPN series, basically, ESPN is polling assorted NFL executives, NFL coaches, NFL scouts, and I believe even some players, and asking them who they think are the best players at each position right now in the NFL. So, last week they went through the defense, and I made a video talking about that. We had a lot of Seahawks in the honorable mention slash picked up a few vote categories, but we did not have anybody in the top 10 on defense, which I guess kind of makes sense when you consider the fact that our defense was pretty bad last year. Offense, on the other hand, the offense was good last year. We had a good top 10 offense, so maybe we're going to do well here. Maybe we'll do a little bit better. And again, one thing I want to stress, this is not the opinion of one guy in who works for ESPN. This is not, I don't know, Bill Barnwell, who hasn't worked for ESPN in forever, I don't think. But off the top of my head, just as an example, this is not one guy just putting together a list. This is a polling of people who work in the NFL right now, which I think is more interesting. Even though, again, what PFF is doing with positional groups is probably a little bit better in terms of trying to figure out what is actually going to help a team win, which teams are actually better. So with that being said, we're going to start with tight ends, and then we're going to move through the positional groups. The way they broke things up were mostly as expected, but they combined left tackle and right tackle into one position, and then they combined all three interior offensive line positions into one, like interior OL with both guard and center spots being basically the same. I don't think they're going to do it for kickers and punters. We would actually probably do pretty well there because we have a kicker and a punter coming off really good seasons. But I don't get the sense ESPN's really going to do that. So we're just going to take a look at what they've done here, see how the Seahawks fared, and see basically what it says about this upcoming season that we're going to be having. So we're going to start with the tight end here. And this one, I think a lot of people know how this one's going to go, and the list does not really surprise in that area. So you go down the list, you got Kelsey, of course, easy. Kittle, Mark Andrews, Goddard, Waller, Hawkinson, Pitts, Ingram, Freiermuth, Knox. So our resident number one tight end, Noah Fant, does not appear. However, he does show up in the honorable mention category after Dalton Schultz and David Njoku and before Tyler Higbee and Hunter Henry. So if you're going to ascribe meaning to the order in which ESPN is placing these players, that would mean that Noah Fant is 13th. So as far as number one tight ends in this league go, Noah Fant is, I guess, the 13th best tight end in the league, making him slightly above average as a starter, which sounds about right to me. I do think that Fant will probably do a little bit less this year just because we added JSN. We're going to use 3 receiver sets more. But he's proven that he can be much more productive than he was for us last season. Last season, he had, I believe, almost 50 catches. It was something like 48, 49, and 490 receiving yards, which was good. That was fine. That's all we really needed from him in that particular year because our receivers were so productive. But he's proven he can do way more than that. So if you need him, he is there for you. But this team, in terms of how they utilize the passing attack, is probably going to be very wide receiver heavy because we have 3 very prolific receivers that we've made significant investments into. But Fant, above average tight end, starting tight end, sounds about right to me. All right, moving along here, we go to the running back. And this is an area where I think some Seahawks fans thought that maybe K9 could sneak in here into that top 10 because he did come off a good year. And I think most people, myself included, project that he's going to be even better this year. You got Nick Chubb, number 1, McCaffrey, number 2, Josh Jacobs, Saquon, who may or may not be playing football this year. Then again, isn't that the same for everybody in the world, I guess? But him especially so. Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, Kamara, Cook, who is not on a team, so that's kind of interesting, right? He's the eighth best running back in the league, and yet nobody wants to even sign him. Tough time to be a running back. Tony Pollard and Austin Eckler. Aaron Jones, Damian Pierce, Breece Hall, Travis Etienne, excuse me, Ramondre Stevenson, honorable mention. So 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and final honorable mention, presumably number 16 on this list, Kenneth Walker III. So we do have an honorable mention here. He barely made the honorable mention cut, but here he is, Kenneth Walker III. He has a chance to go well beyond this year. Like, I expect that by the end of this season, K9 will be considered by many people to be a top 10 running back. I think that this is an okay spot for him right now, but I think that K9 is a guy. I know a lot of people are getting really excited about what Charbonnet is going to do for this offense, and with good reason. But K9 to me is still going to be the far and away featured back in this offense, and I think that he's going to do some things this year that put him at least in the conversation for top 10. But you look at the guys they actually have in the top 10. You've got Austin Eckler, who I mean, the age is becoming a bit of a factor, but the crazy stuff he does as a receiver definitely puts him ahead of a guy like a K9. Tony Pollard, the injury is kind of a big deal right now, but he's also got some versatility, I think, as a player a little bit beyond K9. So I can't really argue any of these guys. Like, I've always maintained that I do actually think that Breece Hall was the best running back in that draft class with K9. And even though the injury, again, is a concern, I do think that Breece Hall is the best running back in that class. Now, I don't know how I feel about Damian Pierce being here. He put up good numbers on a really, really bad team, which to me can be deceptive. But overall, you can see that K9 has the opportunity to break into this top 10. And I think if he stays healthy this year, he will. It's not hard to imagine a lot of the guys in this top 10 are about to hit the cliff. Like, just as an example, Derrick Henry is 29 now. Like, Derrick Henry could be just about done in this league. Alvin Kamara, the mileage on him, it's not so much the age as it is the mileage on Kamara. It can't go on forever. Dalvin Cook has some miles on him too, and he always gets hurt anyway, honestly. So, Eckler, I've already talked about how I feel like the age is going to be a problem for him this year. So, definitely some movement in this list, like there is pretty much every year. So, Walker has a chance to move up. As of right now, he is presumably 16th. So, that seems reasonable. Maybe he could go a little bit higher. I certainly like him more than a guy like Ramondre Stevenson, but Stevenson had 70 catches last year, so I kind of get it. Okay, next up we have offensive tackles. So this would be left tackles and right tackles. And I don't think this is going to surprise anybody, so I'm not even going to really try to bury the lead here. No Seahawks made the top 10 in terms of offensive tackles. We do have some exciting ones, but they're not exactly elite yet. We did not make honorable mention, and no Seahawk player got a vote on the offensive tackle list. So we got shut out here. And I think that's pretty reasonable. I think that Cross has a bright future in front of him, but I don't think he played great last year. I think he played about average for the position. And because of his youth and his upside, he should get a lot better. But as of right now, sure. And Abe Lucas, he plays the lesser important of the two sides. So even though I do think he played well last year, his value is going to be diminished compared to somebody who plays on the left side, which most of these guys do. Not all of them, but most of them do. You have to be like a Lane Johnson, hyper elite, to be considered one of the best tackles in the league when you're playing on the right side. In fact, I believe Trent Williams is the only player in the NFC West to be on this list, if I'm remembering correctly. So, yeah, got some work to do here. The good news is we've already done the hard stuff. We've found the players. We just need to develop the players into what they have the potential to be based off what they did in college, their talent level, etc., etc. So, nothing here yet, though. And interior offensive linemen didn't really do much better. If you go through the list here, you can see no Seahawks in the top 10, no Seahawks in honorable mention, and no Seahawks receiving votes. The only guy we have who could receive votes is Damian Lewis, who I think played really well last year. But I'm not sure he played so well that he should be getting votes. Now, honestly, I will say this. I do think he probably deserves votes more than at least one or two guys who did, like Quinn Miners of the Denver Broncos, the way that whole offensive line played last season for the most part, the way that he has just been kind of a guy. Yeah, I might say I'd rather see votes go to Damian Lewis than a guy like Quinn Miners. Elijah Vera Tucker has been a pretty big disappointment so far. I don't know about him receiving votes over a guy like a Damian Lewis, but that's just kind of, fighting for the very back of the line here. Like, certainly it's hard to argue that he's better than anybody in the honorable mentions list, and certainly not anywhere in the top 10. I do like Evan Brown. I think he'll be a big improvement over what we had last year, but he's obviously not anywhere near this level. I mean, the guy who took his job, more or less, Frank Ragnow, is ranked 10th. So there's no room for Evan Brown there. And yeah, Phil Haynes does not belong getting any kind of votes for much of anything. So, no Seahawk represented on the offensive line side. Also, if you guys recall from last week, we also only had the one honorable mention on the defensive line, Draymond Jones. So if football is truly won and lost in the trenches, then we're not exactly in a great position right now. The good news is we have young guys that can get a lot better, especially at the tackle spots. But that's a conversation for another time. Let's bump along here to quarterback. And this one was going to be very interesting to me. So we got the usual suspects here: Mahomes, Burrow, Allen. I agree with that top three. Rodgers, Herbert, Hurts, Lamar, Trevor, Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Stafford, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, Derek Carr, Tua. I'm just going to call him Tua. Yeah, so that's 15 names. That is the top half of all quarterbacks in the NFL. And we haven't run into Geno Smith yet. You have to get down to the also receiving votes. Kyler Murray, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, Geno Smith bringing up the rear. So, assuming ESPN put this in order, they're trying to tell us that they think Geno Smith is the 20th best quarterback in the league. Now, this is where I really have to... Okay, let me put it to you. Let me put it to you this way. I understand that there has never been a quarterback in the history of the NFL who needs to prove it for a second year more than Geno Smith, because the guy did nothing even close to what he did last year over his previous 8 or 9 seasons in the NFL. I understand. But what Seahawks fan right now, I get this top 8, like this top 8, sure, all the way up to Trevor Lawrence, but the way Dak played last year, the way Dak can't really move anymore, are you real? I mean, the NFL moves quickly, guys. We should not have to sit here for the next 8 years watching Dak Prescott play below average football before we realize, oh, he's just not that good anymore. We need to be able to draw these conclusions quickly based off a modest sample size. That's the job of NFL teams and NFL fans. Because if you take too long to figure things out, it's too late. That's why the Seahawks were able to make out like gangbusters on the Russell Wilson trade. They figured out that he wasn't all that anymore before every other team in the league did, so they were still able to get value for him. So I would take Geno over Dak right now. Stafford, I mean, I kind of get it. He might be a better quarterback than Geno, but what are you going to get out of Stafford this year coming off a pretty massive injury that I think should have ended his career? I don't know why he's coming back, but you really like Stafford's chance to bounce back after a massive injury when he's already 35? I mean, Deshaun Watson's complicated. Kirk Cousins, I know he always puts up the numbers, but you're going to tell me guys like Jared Goff and Derek Carr and Tua and Kyler and these guys, you would take them over Geno? This one I'm not buying. Gino, I think, could make a good argument for top 10, and holding him out of honorable mention to me is kind of a joke. I understand that he's only done it for one season, but guess what? It's the most recent season. Yeah, he had a good situation, but he didn't have a great situation, especially if you're not going to give his offensive line any credit. It's like PFF ranked our offensive line 30th best in the NFL. All right? PFF ranked our running back room not even. No, wait, it was like just inside the top 10 in the league. ESPN's own ranking list hasn't given us a top 10 tight end, a top 10 running back. It's given us no credit on our offensive line either. So you're going to put all these things together. You're going to have to explain to me why our offense was ninth in the NFL in scoring last year. Okay? Because if you're going to tell me it's all because Gino has such amazing things around him, that's not what's being represented in these lists. And I'd like to meet the one Seahawks fan out there, because I believe there's probably only one out there who would actually rather have Kyler Murray or Daniel Jones or Justin Fields instead of Geno Smith right now. Again, I'm assuming these are in order. Maybe they're not. But, I mean, Tua. I know Tua had good moments last year, but I think you would struggle to find a single Seahawks fan who wishes we could swap out Geno for Tua on this team right now. I think you would struggle. Okay, so yeah, that one I really don't agree with. However, we do get to end on a bit of a positive note here. Top 10 wide receivers, which was just posted yesterday. Justin Jefferson, number one, easy. Devontae, Jamar Chase, Tyreek, Cooper, Kupp, Diggs, A.J. Brown. All right, we got ourselves the one and only Seahawks so far to be ranked in the top 10 of any of these lists, DK Metcalf. So he gets some credit. He gets some genuine props for what he's put together over the last 4 seasons. Seems about right to me. I think the ranking's pretty much accurate. Like, a lot of the guys in front of him have had seasons that are significantly better than what Metcalf has had the last 2 years. Now, he plays with a better number 2 than most of the receivers in the NFL, which is reflected if you scroll down a little bit more on this list. But I think number 8 seems pretty fair. And yeah, let's go scroll through these honorable mentions and find the other Seahawk, Tyler Lockett, receiving votes. So obviously they don't consider him to be a top roughly 20 receiver, but they consider him to be top 25. And I mean, some advanced metrics say he's top 10. I don't know if I believe that. I think the yard after the catch thing is a big deal, but he's very special and he's very good in his areas. All right, so that's it. Let me know what you guys think down below. I will see you guys later. Go Hawks.